Hey guys, Omni here. So I did my top 10 favorite films of 2022, and since I'm not doing a top 10 least favorite or worst or anything like that list, I thought I'd do a top 10 favorite TV shows that I watched this year. When choosing this, because there is some overlap, because some shows premiered in 2021 and then transitioned into 2022, some have premiered in 2022 and they are ongoing into 2023. So the way I judge this, at least, is that if the bulk of it took place or it had its finale or a large part of it concluded in 2022, I included it on this list as a possibility, whether or not it makes it on there or not. But I was trying to figure out, how am I going to judge this, because like there's a lot of overlap that occurs with some of these shows. So like stuff like Doom Patrol, which is not yet concluded this year, Willow, those two will not be on this list since I'm watching those currently right now. I know Umbrella Academy Season 3 came out this year, but I'm still watching that. I'm on episode 4 currently, so it's not going to be on my list. I just want to kind of put that out there. I would like to add, before we jump into things, that I have reacted to everything on this list. So if you want to see my reactions, my in-the-moment review, my thoughts on each one of these things that I'm going to mention here on this list, you can check those out on the channel. And I really hope, if you are intrigued at all, or if you haven't seen my reactions to any of the things that I point out on this list or whatever, that you go check those out and let me know your thoughts on them as well. Before we get into the main list, I did want to include an honorable mention because it was one of the most thrilling things I watched all year. The thing is, it is part of a season and not the entire season itself, even if it was 8 episodes, and that is Attack on Titan, the final season, part 2. Oh my God. It was insane, it was intense, it was thrilling. And I want so bad to put it on this list, but I feel like that would just kind of, I don't know. I wouldn't feel right putting it in the top 10 when it's just this little segment. Even if it is a partial season or whatever, or maybe by and large, a lot of other definitions would be a season unto itself, I don't feel right putting it on the list. So I didn't want to include it as an honorable mention. I love that show so much, man, and I cannot wait for the final part that comes out sometime this year. Still no exact date yet, but I'm going to be definitely reacting to it. That series is one of the best shows I've ever watched, man. It's so good. But let's get into the main list. Starting off with number 10, and that is the highly underrated Midnight Club. This is another series from Mike Flanagan that dives into the themes of death. It is not so much this scary kind of ghost story as it is this reverence for life, as we follow Ilanka, who is a teenager who finds out that she's got terminal cancer. She learns of this retreat for terminally ill children, in which there was a story of a girl who went there and got cured of her terminal illness. And she wanted to go there to seek out this mystery and see if maybe she can find out how she can do the same for herself. Along the way, we meet a bunch of different kids, and it is just heartbreaking in the best of ways. But because these kids have this kind of acceptance, it becomes this long-term therapy session about mortality, about what it is to live itself, the quality versus quantity of life. And it's really beautiful. And one of the things they do to help get through this thing is they meet every night at midnight and tell stories. They create their own stories because that's how we live on. That's how we remember things. And we see parts of them reflected in their stories, and it becomes this kind of anthology with this mystery that is in the background in this place that is also unraveling with each episode. And it is emotional. It is beautifully acted. Ruth Codd, who plays Anya in the show, is a standout in this, and I think she was hired, if I remember correctly, she was cast just straight from TikTok. She had never been in anything before, and they brought her in, and she's great. And she's going to be in his next project as well, which I'm really looking forward to. Unfortunately, the show did not do that well, and it will not be continued on to a second season, which was what they were kind of hoping for, because there was a lot of threads left open purposefully at the end. But after the revelation that the show would not be continuing, Mike Flanagan released his entire outline for season 2, what would have happened, the answers to some of those questions. So there at least is some closure there, which closure is very much a pivotal part of this story. It was so much fun to watch. It was a beautiful thing that I just think got really overlooked in the mess of all this content right now.
Still here.
Moving on to my number 9, and that is going to be House of the Dragon. This show brought the Game of Thrones excitement back to life for me. I've talked about this many times here on the channel and just how jaded I've been after season 8 that I really wasn't sure just how much this was going to kind of turn me around. And boy, was I surprised. The show was not perfect. The time skips made it hard to kind of not keep up, but keep invested emotionally in all the different things that have happened, because there's a lot of elements that are influencing the characters that we didn't get to see. A lot of things that are informing in their decisions. There's a lot of things working on behind the scenes in the performances that we just don't really have the context for because the series needed to get moving. But the performances, the casting, the action, the intrigue, the emotion, and one of the best performances of the year, I think, had to come from Paddy Considine's Viserys Targaryen. He was phenomenal in this show, and the way it ended, even though we know the gist of the outcome and where this all leads and what it's all building to, the show makes you kind of forget about all of that, as it is beautifully executed across the board in almost every other way. And it's just those massive time skips that we have to fill in the gaps ourselves that really kind of kept this from being any higher on my list.
Now they see you as you are.
Number 8 is going to be a recent addition, and that is Wednesday, which we reacted to not too long ago. Finally wrapped up my reactions to that about 2 weeks ago, give or take, and it was just a thrilling ride, man. I'm a huge Addams Family fan, from the original 60s series to the 90s films to the animated cartoon and all that. I really love this world, these characters, and I wasn't sure about this when I saw the trailer. It looked great, but it had that kind of like, I was worried about it being a little too CW-y or something along those lines, but my God, Tim Burton blew me out of the water. Jenna Ortega gave one of the best performances of the year. This show was so much fun that even by the second episode, because I was behind on this compared to some other people, and it got spoiled for me, one of the big reveals of the show, and that did not detract at all. Even to the point where the show is so keeping you on your toes so much that I even started to think that that it might have been a lie to throw me off during the reactions, but it did end up proving to be true, and that just goes to show that the show was just so much fun and so wild and so well written that it just continued to keep me guessing, kept me on my toes, kept me invested, kept me excited every step of the way with the twists, turns, and reveals throughout. It was a lot of fun, and I really hope we get a season 2 for this, because I'm really wanting to dive in and stay in this world. Number 7 is going to be Andor. This show, as far as Star Wars is concerned, took things to a whole other level for me. I went into this, obviously I talked about this in the trailers, I've talked this on the channel before. When this was announced, I was like, why? Why? We know what happens, we know his character, why are we making a whole show about Cassian Andor? And this show isn't really about Cassian Andor. He is our like focal point. But the show itself is more about the greater galaxy as a whole, about the formation of the rebellion. It's not just about Cassian, it is about the idea of rebellion itself and what does it take to make actual change in a world run by these fascists, by this empire. And seeing the different ways that the empire has kind of got its teeth into these people that are just struggling. They don't have the Force, they are not Jedi, they are not these Mandalorian bounty hunters, they're not Inquisitors, they are just these run-of-the-mill people who are trapped in this world with doing whatever they can with whatever they have to try to keep their heads above water. The intrigue, the political aspects of it, the espionage aspects of it, the performances. Stellan Skarsgård and Andy Serkis both gave 2 of the best monologues I've heard all year in this show, and it really did take Star Wars itself into a place where it feels more mature. It feels like a natural evolution of what we've been given, what we've been getting for the last couple of years. Maybe it helps that we've been getting that nostalgia itch scratched by like stuff like The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan, Clone Wars, Bad Batch, and stuff like that we can finally be a little more open. It was a lot of fun. I cannot wait for season 2. Tony Gilroy did a phenomenal job directing and writing the series and show running it. I cannot wait to see what they do with this character, and check out my reactions. Number 6 is going to be Cobra Kai Season 5. Every year, this show continues to up the stakes, up the excitement, up the ante in every way possible, in the levels of excess of ridiculous states and situations that this group of characters keep getting themselves in with this karate war. This show that when it was pitched initially, and I've said this many times, that it seemed like a joke, it seemed like it was going to be a parody. It shouldn't work, but it does. This show got me leaping out of my chair in excitement. This show makes me cry. This show makes me laugh. This show gets me so pumped up, and it's one of these shows that's so therapeutic to watch. And this season just kind of focused a lot more on a lot of these intimate relationships and growing the characters to a point where we've kind of been seeing a lot of tension, a lot of these repeating cycles throughout the first 4 seasons, and a lot of those finally have evolved and paid off in season 5. There's some great sequences. There's some great cameos and throwbacks and homages to the original series, and we're seeing the characters grow and become who they are today in this show, particularly Johnny and Daniel. It's been a wild ride. I love this show. It shouldn't work, but it is definitely one of my favorites. And by the time this is over, who knows? This might make or break onto my top 10 shows of all time. We'll have to wait and see, though.
I told you not to play with fire.
Number 5 came out of nowhere and surprised me so much, and that was The Legend of Vox Machina. I only heard about this show maybe like a week or 2 before it released, when somebody suggested that I check out this cast announcement for this show that Amazon Prime was going to be doing. I've always heard of Critical Role and the D&D campaigns that they run, but I never really sat down and watched it until this show came about, especially since D&D's become a very integral part of my life in the past 4 years. It's been something I do every week to every other week with a group that I've been with the same group for so long now, that it's just so much fun. And when I heard there was going to be this animated D&D show based around their campaign, I was like, oh, that sounds really fun. I checked out the trailer and it looked hilarious. It looks wild. It encapsulates the chaos of just a table of friends hanging out and just doing whatever the hell happens and whatever happens on the table when you roll that dice. It is raunchy, it's filthy, it's heartfelt, it's action-packed, it is beautiful. The animation for this show is stellar. The music is even better. There are some tunes in this that I just have to play when I'm out cruising in the car. Of course, the whole cast is seasoned voice actors with plenty of celebrity cameos sprinkled throughout, but the core cast themselves, the people who ran the original campaign and who kickstarted and funded this for the most part themselves through the community and the demand from their audience, created this, and Amazon saw that and was like, okay, we'll back you. And then here we are, and we're about to get season 2 next month, which we will be reacting to, and I cannot wait. This show is fantasy at its peak, I would say, and I had so much fun watching it. I love this show, man.
I suggest we run right now. Fuck that. We fight.
Another surprise was Peacemaker this year, which comes in at my number 4. James Gunn made me care about this piece of shit played by John Cena that we got in his reboot of the Suicide Squad. And I was like, how are we centering a show around this guy? And how are we supposed to get invested? And oh my God, they made him such a flawed, broken, and tragic character. This is hands down the best performance I've ever seen from John Cena. He becomes open and vulnerable and layered in a way that I've never seen him do in anything else he's been in. This show is fun, it is wacky, it is gory, it is raunchy, just all the James Gunn-isms that you can expect when he's kind of unfettered. But at the core of it all, just like with anything else he does, he takes these broken characters and really gets you invested in it, finding these ways to relate to these people you never thought you would and break them down and flesh them out. It made me weep, it made me laugh, it made me just smile from ear to ear so often that I was really shocked. And it has the best opening sequence, fight me, of anything that it came out this year. God, I still need to learn that dance, and I will one of these days.
It's like a real team out there. Eat peace, mother.
These final three is a tough one for me, but coming in at number 3 is going to be Better Call Saul Season 6, the final season, finally closing the loop on the big three, Jesse, Walt, and Saul, that made up this trifecta that we followed throughout Breaking Bad. Finally, we are catching up with Jimmy as the timeline in the past is finally getting up to where we're in the era of Breaking Bad with Lalo Salamanca, who is a standout villain played beautifully by Tony Dalton. And then on top of that, these amazing performances by Giancarlo Esposito returning as Gus, Rhea Seehorn with some really standout and beautiful performances as Kim Wexler in this season, Frank Fabian as Howard, who became this character I never thought I would be so invested in and kind of rooting for in the wake of all this stuff that's happened. Jonathan Banks, of course, as Mike Ehrmantraut, who surprised the crap out of me in my recent Gremlins reaction to see him pop up in that. That was a happy little surprise there I did not expect. If you haven't seen my reaction to Gremlins, go check that out. Had no idea he was in there, but again, he continues to be a pillar of this whole franchise. And then, of course, how can you talk about this series without talking about Saul / Jimmy himself, Bob Odenkirk, who, it's just, this show is so masterfully made. When it comes to television, Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan are unmatched, I have to say. Breaking Bad is, as far as television shows go, I think the closest to a masterpiece and perfect television that I've seen. And Better Call Saul falls just under that. If you have not seen Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, I highly recommend you getting into this series. If you've not seen it, it is must-watch television.
Whatever happens next is not gonna go down the way you think it is.
My number 2 is going to be Stranger Things Season 4. Now, this show, I picked up this year. I started it, I think, back in February, and I was watching 2 episodes a week. We caught up just before Season 4 came out. I put off watching this show for a long time, and when they were announced that Season 5 was going to be the final season or whatever, I was like, maybe now is probably the best time to get in on this. And Season 4 is coming out soon, so maybe if I time this right, I can just kind of get in the swing of things and finally be watching the show along with everybody. Holy crap, I did not know what I was getting into, and the entire ride, which I documented here on the channel, which you can check out my reactions to Seasons 1 through 4 that I put out all this year. You can check those out. And Season 4 was some of the best, most exciting and thrilling television that I've watched all year. This show is not embarrassed by the genre itself that it lives in. It loves these tropes, this era, these films that it pays homage to. This particular season influenced large in part by Nightmare on Elm Street with these Freddy Krueger vibes with Vecna, with a guest appearance from the man, the myth, the legend himself, Robert Englund, as well in this. Was such a surprise. These characters I've just gotten to be so invested in over these last few months. It's been some of the most thrilling television that I've ever watched. Like, I'm confident that once this is over, this will be in my top 10 list, and it's tough because I have to decide on what to kick out of that list, and I know this one beats a lot of the shows that I have on there, and it's definitely going to be in there. I was worried when I got in this it might have been overhyped or any of this, but this show was not. It was beautiful end to end. It's emotional. It's hilarious. These characters feel real in these ridiculous situations. Season 4 is no different, and it just took things to a whole other scope and level with these feature-length episodes. These episodes were long, and it was great. It never felt like there was time wasted. It really escalated the show in a very natural way from season to season to where we are here. And my lord, the ending of Season 4, I really cannot wait for Season 5. I cannot wait to see what they do with this. This show just came out of nowhere for me. Just the style, the characters, the music, giving us one of the most metal scenes and sequences that I've seen on screen in a long time. With the music choices, with the visuals, this definitely took the entire series to a whole new level.
You have lost.
Finally, my number one that I knew nothing about going into it. I've only heard about it and the praise that it gets end on end for being a pillar of literature, and that is Netflix's adaptation of Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. This show was beautiful. It was this look into humanity and dreams and hope and just these larger than life concepts that become personified, that can be explored in these really creative, imaginative ways that only Neil Gaiman could bring to life. And I didn't know what to expect with this. Tom Sturridge gives a haunting and chilling performance as Dream, as Morpheus, as our lead through this journey, the Sandman himself. And it's just a interesting look from this essentially a deity who is trying to wrap his head around the human condition, humanity itself, and his experiences and interactions with different types of people, and how that makes him kind of change and reflect on his own relationship with these people, with these mortals. It is brilliant, and there is an episode in this that is hauntingly, horrifyingly beautiful about death, that just makes you, much in a way like a Mike Flanagan series would do, makes you really rethink about our mortality in a way that is a little more welcoming in a way. There's a lot of fun twists and turns. This has some of the best visuals that I've seen all year, and this was not a cheap show by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of people were really worried that Netflix was not going to greenlight a second season, but they finally did, weeks after it concluded. And we even got a bonus episode in addition to that after the original 10 came out. That was so good, man. One of them was a completely animated one, which was thrilling. Hell, after I finished this show, I went out and ordered the entire run of the Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. I have not read past where the show goes because I don't want to spoil anything for myself, but I have read everything that the show itself covered. The source material itself is a literary masterpiece, and I do think, though, that the show improves upon that foundation, and it makes me so excited to see what they do and what worlds we see and what kind of things that pull out of this world and what more this world has to offer. This is also the second show to have Gwendolyn Christie on the list, and she plays Lucifer beautifully in this and definitely seems to be setting up to having a much larger part in season 2, which I'm really excited to see. It's definitely not going to be for everybody, but it is by far my favorite thing that I've watched this year on TV or streaming.
Dreams don't die.
Mr. Sandman, bring me a dream.
But guys, that's been my top 10 favorite shows of 2022. What were yours? Sound off the comments. Let me know your thoughts down below. We'll carry on the conversation after the video. Remember, I've got reactions up to everything that I mentioned on this list here today. Check those out if you have not. But for now, before we go, I want to shout out our channel legends: Manny Sherritt, Ryan Karen, Philly Vane, Yori, Corey Scott, Margaret Grace, Melita, Robert Anguiano, Raven McCann, Jeffrey Hale, M. Sephiroth, Jake Cantrell, and Amy Becca. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. And thank you to everybody who's just made this year one of the best ones the channel has had in a long time. Thank you all so much. It's been wild. It's been crazy. But I hope you all have a safe rest of your weekend, and I will see you guys in the new year. Take care, everybody.